The following segment is sponsored by El Tigre Silver Corp., trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ELS.V and on the OTCQX as EGRTF. El Tigre Silver Corp. Is focused on silver exploration and development in prolific Sonora State, Mexico. Find them on the web at eltigresilvercorp.com. Join me for a conversation with a frequent guest of the show, David Morgan, the Silver Guru, an expert on money, metals, and mining, also a lecturer and an author. Mr. Morgan has written Get the Skinny on Silver Investing, available on Amazon.com. His website is themorganreport.com. David, welcome back to the program.
Oh, it's great to be back.
You and I have been in the business of covering the resource sector for many, many years. I'm finding that quite a few of these junior mining stocks, or shall I say some of them out of Vancouver, have gone green. And by green, I don't mean environmentally green, as in good for the environment. I'm talking about herbally green, as in weed, cannabis, pot, reefer, Mary Jane, marijuana, smoke. Now, you live in Washington State, where it's all legal, David. Why are some of these junior mining companies lighting up, so to speak?
Well, I'm going to speak to it directly, but hopefully in a general way, because I don't need any of these characters slapping me or trying to get me into court. But what's very interesting about the mining sector, but really more specifically the penny stock mining sector, which, when I started the Morgan Report, I kind of made a vow, which I broke, and the vow was to not touch any penny mining stock at all. And the reason being is that a lot of these, not all of them, but a fair percentage of them are just story stocks with the promoter, and they're there for one and one reason only, and that's to separate the investor from their money. And I didn't want that to happen to any of the people that believed in me or our work, and of course it's much bigger than me these days. There's several of us that work on the report, but nonetheless, I just want to avoid it altogether. And we still have that philosophy, although when I started, there were some very underpriced value stocks there that some of these legitimate people had held on to and basically sold their clothes off their back as a metaphor. I mean, they really were digging into the last of their savings to hold these properties because they were so good. So in the beginning, there were actually some fairly easy pickings to separate the promotional type of situations from the legitimate ones. Having said all that, I think the amount of Vancouver bad guys, let's call them, or bad gals, as we could call them, bad people, are much less percentage-wise than it was back when I was starting to invest in this sector, which was back in the 70s. But nonetheless, they still exist. So a lot of these companies fail at whatever, and the promoters don't care what they promote as long as it's in vogue. When mining's in vogue, they'll promote mining. When marijuana's in vogue, they're going to promote marijuana. So you see a lot of this happening because they have what's called the shell, which is a public entity that has a stock base and some amount of shareholders, and they do is they revamp it, they rename it, they do the appropriate filings, and they come out, and all of a sudden, instead of being the XYZ mining company, now they're the ABC marijuana company. And this is just part of the deal. I mean, this is part of being a sophisticated investor, is understanding when you're in the stock market in general, there's risk at all levels, top tier all the way down. But more of the, let's say, loosey-goosey type of situations take place in the stock world. And a lot of these people that live there, let's say, very good at promoting a story, and that's all they're doing. They're promoting a story. They really don't have any intent for really making a legitimate business. This is unfortunate. This is, not free market, but they'll tell you, these sociopaths, these psychopaths, they'll tell you that that's just part of the free market process. Buyer beware, and people, if they're dumb enough to give them their money, that they deserve to take it from them. I disagree with that 100%. I think that it's a moral situation, and if anyone has, decent morals, that they're not going to have that attitude. But you cannot legislate honesty. I mean, the regulators try, and they say you can't do this, and if you do that, there's penalties and all that, and all the legislation in the world cannot control these type of people that have no conscience and have a belief system that is contradictory to the way most of us operate. So it's sad but true. So look for, all these mining companies moving to marijuana. And one last thing, and trying to be unbiased, which I can, because it's morally reprehensible to me personally, but it serves a purpose, I think, and the purpose is it's a hard lesson, for people to understand that this does exist, so that they need due diligence, so they need, a newsletter writer or whatever. And let's say, and I'll just speak plainly here, that a lot of these not a lot, but some of these newsletters are in bed with these type of individuals, so you got to be very careful. Some, such as myself, can be conned by these types. I mean, the Morgan Report spends very little time in the penny stock sector, but I have done them, and we have had problems. I have one that was as legitimate as they get. It's one of the richest gold mines in the world, and this management team just really blew it as far as I'm concerned. And I hate to make excuses, but, you can check the facts and make your own decision. So this was a legitimate situation that failed, and then we had a couple probably in the 15 years or so that basically were not what they were purported to be, and that happens. But again, I will defend myself, and the reason I do that is because I know what I know and do what I do. You shouldn't get hurt in those situations, even though we made a mistake, if you do what we say, and that's to put equal dollar amounts into all 10 situations, and don't put in more than you can afford to lose. And if you take that philosophy, which we teach, and we pound the table, this is how you do it, this is how you do it, this is how you do it. If you do that, then you've definitely made a lot more money than you've lost in that part of the speculative section portfolio. But again, that's the money that you can afford to lose. The top tier and the mid tier are more solid producing companies that we can get an income statement and a balance sheet. We know the management, and basically it's like analyzing any stock. You get a lot better information. You can do a lot better job on forecasting, the growth rate, what the internal rate of return will be, what the projected price could be, and that type of thing. Whereas on these smaller stocks, there's not enough data to do that. You just can't. It's a guess. It's a management bet. It's a location bet. It's a proximity bet, or whatever. But it's a fascinating area because these promoters are making a lot of money because they're good at what they do. And what they're good is telling a story and getting the public to buy and jump on board.
You've made several good points, and the reason we're even talking about these promoters right now is because we're getting into an area where there's a lot of so-called legitimate press about the legalization of marijuana and all the support industry, if you will, surrounding it across the U.S. Now, we've never had the eyes and ears on precious metals and the resource sector like we expected, although that could certainly happen someday. We are really seeing large interest, major public attention right now with regard to cannabis. While metal stocks have not gone viral, some of these cannabis stocks have, or have yet to, and may in fact do so in the near future. The risk for these promoters to railroad the investing public is now greater than ever. Where's that regulation? Where was that regulation? And these regulators, and I hope they're not listening to the program, have they ever had a clue about who to regulate and who not to regulate? Why do these people still exist? Why aren't they in jail? Yeah, I said that.
Oh, boy. Well, it's tough. I mean, the mining sector is, the problem is you got to prove intent, and it's impossible almost, because let's take the mining example better because I'm more familiar with it. But if you go out and you spend some money on the drilling and you drill a couple holes and you don't, find a resource, then, it's pretty hard, even in a court of law, to say that the intent from the beginning was to go out and take a bunch of money and fleece the public. Even though if you looked at the balance sheet and you see that the company took in on these numbers to get the idea, let's say they raised $5 million and $4 million was spent on a luxurious living style for the promoter and a couple of his cronies in the organization, but 20% was actually put in the ground. Obviously, this was a company that was taking the public's money to benefit the promoter. Legally, it's pretty tough to actually get a conviction that this was the intent all along. So I had to fly here and fly there and fly there because I was promoting the company, and I always have to stay in a, 5-star hotel because bankers wouldn't take me legitimately if I was staying in a, Motel 6. And it just goes on and on. So it's very difficult to actually pin these guys down, although, in my view, and this is a bit biased, I mean, the authorities they do look at these companies, in fact, probably more often than they look at bigger companies. I mean, where were they on the Enron situation? Where were they on the Bernie Madoff situation? I mean, it's really tough to police everything because it's not that pervasive, although it is somewhat. You got to be careful. So they get a conviction. So they finally get into court and they prove, or a lot of times they don't prove, but they'll at least get some type of something out of the party they're going after, okay? And that may be that they're banned from penny stock trading for a year, they're banned from being an officer of a company for a long period of time, or that type of thing. Well, these guys will just resurrect under another fictional entity, which is what all the system is based on. I mean, go touch Mr. Walmart. You can't. It's a corporation. It's a legal structure. It's a legal entity, but it doesn't exist as flesh and blood. So they'll create another XYZ mining or XYZ marijuana company, and they will be in the background. And a lot of these guys will put out some very top-notch people that are retired or near retirement or have done a good discovery in the past, and they may not even know who the heck they're dealing with. And so that gives it more credibility. And then they just go to task and start promoting this company. And again, it's very difficult to say, you know, even though we use most of the money for our luxurious lifestyles, we still were doing our job, you know. So it's a tough one, Ellis. It really is something that, you know, need to be aware of. And the other thing that I have to say is really the one that I go, oh man, you know, how do you get out of this? Or I don't know the right expression. It's one that I just pull my hair out on, because there, for an example, there was one company that's probably there is a company that is a silver company that had one of the best discoveries out there. So there's several that have that in the last decade. But this company going in was one of these basic pump and dump situations. Yet the truth of the matter is that they did make a huge discovery. So even if you know ahead of time the intent is malicious, you can't predict with 100% accuracy that that will be the outcome. I know of a company specifically where the intent was to basically fleece the public, yet it turned in to be one of the best silver discoveries. It became, you know, overnight it became very legitimate. And of course, a promoter like that would just love it, you know, because this gives that whole situation lots of legitimacy. And then the next time they go into another situation, be it in the mining sector or some other sector, they have a lot of built-in credibility now.
It's amazing with regard to some of these promoters, and again, we all know who some of them are. Like you said, that happened with a silver company. I know of a gold company where the same thing happened. They hit almost a motherlode, and they're legit. And some of these bad people that we were passing judgment on, and rightly so, because they kept drills in the ground because they had to, they hit on something. It's just amazing.
It is. I mean, it shows you the randomness of the universe. It shows you that, you know, you can't predict human behavior with 100% accuracy. It shows you a lot of things, and that's why, you know, early on, I really did some critical thinking and thought it through. And when I decided to do the speculative section, I determined, you know, how I was going to do it. And knowing what I know, that this could happen, not that I would pile up any of these promoter-only type of stocks. I don't. I try to avoid them at all costs, although I have made some errors a couple times in 15 years. I have. But if you take 10, again, and you equal dollar amounts, etc., you can do well. It's a very interesting part of the market. Again, that's not where we specialize. A lot of newsletter writers do. I mean, they pretty much stick around in the, you know, the subset, let's call it, of the mining sector, or the subset of the overall market. I mean, these pink sheet stocks, these over-the-counter stocks, these, you know, little bitty micro-cap stocks, and some of them are legit, some are not. You just really have a tough time knowing, you know, ahead of time. And again, even knowing ahead of time doesn't always work out. I mean, these guys do get lucky from time to time.
It's interesting to attempt to imagine some of these newsletter writers putting on the green hat and switching from mining to marijuana. Instead of resource conferences, they're all attending these weed conferences. I can only imagine what they'd be like to attend. But where else are they going to go? There's no story in mining right now. Let's come out and say that. Let's come right out and just say that. There's no story in mining right now.
Yeah, that's pretty true. I mean, the story is one that's really worn out. I mean, it's that the market is dull or dead, and it's going sideways, and it's never going to get off the mat, and it's controlled, and on it goes. I mean, it's definitely the time you should be a contrarian. You should start to accumulate or continue to accumulate. There's an adage in the commodities market, never sell a quiet market. We have a very quiet market. It's probably going to become more quiet because the summer seasonality is pretty accurate in the mining business, the metals business. I mean, the best time to buy is usually in August, so usually you have a dull summer, and we're probably going to, you know, we're in spring now. I know we're not even in the summer yet, but we're moving into spring, and spring into summer usually is pretty benign for the metals. So it really takes conviction. And again, it takes sophistication. I mean, you want to buy when no one else wants to. You want to buy when everyone shuns it. You want to buy, it's the old straw hats in the wintertime type of scenario. I mean, this is definitely that scenario. This is a time when no one wants them. So this is a time to really start doing some homework and determining good value situations that are undervalued, perhaps speculative situations that have been beaten up. Last thing on the speculations, and that is, the way I've done it, and it's worked well. I'll give you a couple examples. I'll give you one anyway, and that was like Western Copper. The Western Copper was on the speculative list. It was a penny stock, and we had it on the list, and that company changed its name from Western Copper, which really is a copper company, by the way, to Western Silver, because silver has a lot more pizzazz and sells for a much higher multiple than copper ever does. So Western Copper becomes Western Silver, and then they make this big discovery, and then it becomes bought out by Glamis, which is a good-sized gold company, and that company was bought out by Goldcorp. So had you stuck with that investment when we recommended it, you would end up with some shares of Goldcorp. But the sub-point I want to make is that we watch these speculations very carefully, and when the story changes, it becomes a different company. So an example I used of the intent being basically to separate the public from their money, and a discovery was made, that would be a company that we would be following, and we might buy more as it moves up and say, well, David, you have to buy low and sell high. Why would you buy into this company at a much higher price? And the reason is it's a different company. If you have a company that's going to discover something and you buy it with money you can afford to lose, and then they make a big discovery and you know enough about the mining industry to know that that discovery is being underpriced by the market, then that's a very solid investment. And so we've done that a few times on the speculative section. I go on to brag, and it's factual to the best of my knowledge, I want to be careful here, that more of our speculations have gone on to become legitimate mines than anybody else in the industry. And that's pretty hard to do, because the average is 1 out of 4,000 becomes an actual mine, and we have a much higher track record than that. Does that mean that we get it right 100% of the time? No. We do make errors. We do make mistakes. Again, if you follow the rules and start off betting small amounts of money that you can afford to lose and spread it out, you have a plan. You have a plan of action. You have a mandate. You have something that you know is solid. You have basically an investor mentality, or even a speculator mentality, but a sophisticated, well-knowing, well-intentioned speculator that knows how to make money, that wants to make money, that puts all the advantages in their favor, rather than, oh my goodness, did you hear about blah, 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 marijuana company? Did you hear what they're going to do? They're going to, well, they're going to probably separate you from your money, is what they're probably going to do.
I guess you won't be giving the same advice to your subscribers that you have about precious metals lately with respect to buying the physical silver and then sitting on the sidelines with paper. You won't be saying with regard to marijuana, buy the physical weed and sit on the sidelines for the time being.
I don't know. I'll be a bit humorous here. I guess I don't know anything about how you preserve marijuana, or even if it has to be kept fresh, but I imagine it does. I think it's like tea or coffee or anything like that. I'm guessing this, but if you bought some high-grade marijuana physically and held it, you'd probably have to have a humidor or something to keep it fresh. But in that case, yeah, why not? I guess I don't know.
So even that's a bad investment, then, more or less.
I would suppose. I mean, as long as you can keep it at the quality, I suppose it wouldn't be a bad idea. I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
Of course you don't know much about it, David, and neither do I. We'll be right back. The Ellis Martin Report is sponsored by El Tigre Silver Corp, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ELS.V and on the OTCQX as EGRTF. Silver has been considered a precious metal for 6,000 years and currency since 600 BC. It's been commercially mined in Mexico since 1530 in mineral-prolific and mining-friendly Sonora State. El Tigre's properties with gold and silver mining concessions span 215 square kilometers, or 83 square miles. With an attractive share structure and a strong, proven management team, El Tigre Silver Corp is poised to identify a resource in an area that from 1903 to 1938 produced 75 million ounces of silver and 380,000 ounces of gold. Additionally, their tailing stockpile is currently progressing to production. Learn more about El Tigre Silver Corp by visiting their website, eltigresilvercorp.com, or click through El Tigre's logo on the homepage of our website, ellismartinreport.com.
We offer expert opinions only. Find them on our website, ellismartinreport.com. That's ellismartinreport.com.
And we're back. Well, if we're going to see a relatively dull or uneventful metals market throughout the summer, it does not mean that you're going to fall back and not watch the markets. looking for real opportunity.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we stay on top of it. This is how we, make a living. We're very passionate about it. We do the best job humanly possible. Again, we do make errors from time to time. Nonetheless, it's a paradox. We have our best interests at heart, and we have your best interests at heart. Being in this industry for quite some time, I can say with authority that not everyone has that attitude, but ours is. I mean, we win when you win. We want you to win. We want to win. And so we have a mutual beneficial situation. It's a paradox. Are we self-serving? Yeah, in some ways we are, because we're in the sector. We're in the sector heavily, and almost everything that's in the Morgan Report we own. But we also do it because we're sharing with you my 40 years and these other guys' experience to help you. And we want to help you, and we want to see you do well, and we want to see you win. So this is something a lot of in the industry are basically there for maybe other purposes. There are several that have the same attitude as me. Believe me, there's a lot of great guys and gals in the industry that really are heartfelt and want to benefit their readers a great deal. It's pretty obvious, I think, if you meet these people in person, what their character really is. So kudos to the industry. There's bad apples in every industry at all levels. I mean, let's not even go there, but at all levels you can read into that what you wish. So
I think I'll call this segment Miners Go to Pot, literally. David, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for your insight, and thanks again for joining me today on the program. I've been chatting with David Morgan of themorganreport.com. Listen to the segment again on the podcast page of our website, ellismartinreport.com. This segment has been sponsored by El Tigre Silver Corp., trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ELS.V and on the OTCQX as EGRTF. El Tigre Silver Corp. is focused on silver exploration and development in prolific Sonora State, Mexico. Find them on the web at eltigresilvercorp.com.